Okay. Good morning and welcome to Coffee in CHIKAHAN by the Entrepreneurs. The Entrepreneurs are a female-led Filipino food and cultural advocacy based in Melbourne, and we volunteer our skills in business, design, storytelling, community building and hospitality to promote and build representation of our food and culture. The purpose of Coffee in CHIKAHAN is really about building community through conversation to connect, learn and uplift in the time of this pandemic. It's real talk with real people in business, creation and education of food. And today we welcome you to our 8th episode of the series where we discuss and explore the topic around Filipino migrant student experience. And we welcome our panel, our educators, Regan Marquez, Kristine Aquino, and 2 Filipino international students, Dennis Kanatan and Fellow Rico. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, guys. And today we're really going to focus on the purpose of the conversation to examine the notion of Damayang, which for me, it's actually a new terminology in my understanding of Filipino words. So this was really perfect. And it's a Filipino concept of sharing and caring. And during this major unprecedented time of global crisis brought along by Corona, we thought it'd be best to actually understand what we can do to provide the care and support to our Filipino international students, as well as the educators that have brought together this amazing program called Damayang Migrante through the affiliation of both Bayan Melbourne and the Philippine Studies Network in Australia, or in short, PINAS. So before we get going on the conversation, wanted to do a bit of an icebreaker with everyone on the call. As this was a question sort of nominated to us by one of our entrepreneurs, sis, Kristine Naray, if you tell us a little bit about a Filipino food item that you didn't like so much as you were a child growing up, but love now as an adult. And maybe we can get started with Kristine.
Hi, and again, thank you for the invitation. Sorry, you might hear my daughter crying. She just arrived from work from home life, I suppose.
Yes,
yeah, this is a tricky one because I actually couldn't remember what I didn't like. So you might have to ask my parents or my grandma about that one. But I mean, I remember not really being a fan of corned beef whenever it was served. But now as an adult, I suppose, I am appreciating its kind of versatility. And in terms of, I'm really fascinated as well how Filipinos kind of find ways to jazz it up. So I find that very interesting and kind of appreciate it. And I'm not sure if I like it, but still, but
how are you serving it up, Kristine? How are you serving it up?
Oh, me, I still don't serve it.
Oh, you don't?
But I mean, I might add like tomatoes or something like that. But I know it can come in all sorts of crazy forms, which I think is very innovative Filipinos.
Very true. Very true. Regan,
How about
what's
you,
yours?
Regan?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting us for this wonderful conversation. I remember paksiw.
Oh.
So it's a vinegar stew, whether it's fish or meat. I guess when you're young, you're sort of hating the powerful taste of sourness or whatever taste that is so strong. But now being in a temperate country, you miss that tropicality, that freshness, that brightness. So, I now love cooking paksiw, whether it's fish. I guess it's just trying to mute the flavor. It's not too sour. And I think it's the Filipino taste where you can modify your own preference to a particular taste.
Just had lechon paksiw a few weeks ago. Very crazy.
Oh, wow.
But I haven't had the fish paksiw for a while, so I might do that this week. Introduce to my children actually, because they haven't tasted it yet. Thanks for the reminder, Regan.
Yeah.
And Stella, how about you?
Hi again, everyone, and thank you for having us here. Yeah, back when I was still young, I remember I don't like the taste of sinigang because of the
Really?
sourness and the bitterness. But
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe because back in those days, we're being a young one, we were so picky,
Yeah.
and yeah. But now that I'm a cookery student also, and I'm trying to taste all different kinds of food and flavor. So but right now I'm enjoying it, sinigang taste, and it's not like before that I'm so picky and like when I taste it, it's like your face would like really turn into something because of the
It's
sourness.
sour
But
face.
yeah, the sour face. But now I learned to love it already, and then I adjust because maybe because of my profession also that I have to balance everything, and then I need to use my mouth and all the taste of different culture of the foods. So
Yeah.
yeah, sinigang is
Amazing.
the yeah.
Fabulous. And Venice, you?
Hi. Yeah, thank you for having me in here. Well, the food that I didn't like when I was a child was pinakbit.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a mixture of pork, eggplant, pumpkin, okra, string beans, and other ingredients. So I was never a fan of vegetables when I was young. So I just want to eat pork, beef, chicken,
Meat.
but
All meat, right? No veggies.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but when I grew up, I just started to appreciate the benefits of eating vegetables. So I realized that it is a good dish and it's good for the health. So it makes
Yes,
me feel healthy and live longer.
absolutely.
That's awesome.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Well, let's get into the conversation, into the questions and answers. The first question we have here, I just wanted maybe to paint a picture that kind of sort of frames our conversation today. So, Regan, just based on our first prep call, you told us that there's about 5,000 Filipino international students in Victoria, enrolled in private colleges, TAFEs, and mostly vocational training institutes. Many students are studying and working hospitality, like yourself, Salo.
Yes.
And obviously undergoing this really unexpected hardship during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of people, like many, have lost their jobs, and obviously, you don't qualify. A lot of the students and migrant workers don't qualify for any of the government support measures. So many are without accommodation, and they're not able to return home because of the travel ban as well. So, I mean, that's pretty sort of, difficult scenario. I think we're all going through different aspects of this pandemic crisis, but more so with you guys. How are you both, or how are you all staying positive at this time and taking care of your mental and health and mental well-being and physical well-being? First and foremost. Great. Let's ask.
I mean, maybe we could start with the students.
Yeah.
Venice and
Yes.
Cello.
So yeah, to be honest, at first when back when in March when everything were this were happened, so yeah, I to be honest, we can't really say that we're good. So we're not really good at that time. So we're so down because me in the I'm relying because when I went here, um I rely on my own savings and my own yung pangarap ko po na pumunta dito. Kasi back in the Philippines, I'm a professional one. I'm a graduate. I have my job, but I risk to come in here because I want my life to have a different one back in the Philippines. And I risk everything back there to come in here and then to pursue to have a better future. So I rely on myself. I don't have anyone relying on that can help me in times of the pandemic happens. So back in March when everything happened, and then one of my managers said that we have to reduce staff, and unfortunately that's one of you. So but yeah, so nandun ho yung parang depression, lungkot, lahat. Kasi wala akong mapagsabihan. Hindi ko naman pwedeng sabihan yung parents ko kasi alam ko malulungkot din sila sa sitwasyon ko. And the thing is, hindi rin ho ako makakauwi because may two reason ho. Una, wala ho akong money kasi yung money ko na naiwan sa savings ko is enough for my daily expenses and naggamit ko na rin sa school ko. And then second one is pag umuwi ako, parang binitiwan ko na rin ho yung mga pangarap ko at saka yung risk na ginawa ko back in the Philippines just to come here. And yun yung mahirap kasi every night at that time, you're just thinking inside your room, thinking na parang, ano mangyayari sa akin? Walang mangyayari sa akin. Parang, sinong tutulong sa akin? Ganon. Pero at the other side naman, kasi ako lang mag-isa, so I have to make a way for myself also that hindi ako pwedeng habang buhay nakatunganga sa kwarto ko without doing anything. So yun nga, kinausap ko yun dito sa YHA. Alam niyo naman ho na dito ho sa YHA, mabait din ho yung manager ko because they give me a free accommodation in exchange that I do some volunteer work. So I do some cleaning in the night, or if they don't have people in the late night to attend the reception, so I stay in here. And then in terms of food ho, so like Damayang Migrante and other organization, that time they were giving away some free foods, free donation, free groceries. So that's in a way ho helpful na naka-coop up po sa akin during those time of pandemics na naka-survive ako until now. So yun, when the restriction is, so gumawa pa rin ako ng paraan kasi sabi ko wala pang work makuha, so wala tutulong sa akin. So I offer some service, like I have experience in cleaning, so I offer some service in our Filipino people that willing to hire me to do some cleaning job. So yun yung but until now hindi pa rin ho nawawala yung yung dream ko na in the future I'll be alright, and then babalik ko tayo sa dati. It's just now lang talaga na mahirap. Pero yun nga, because of people like Kuya Regan and other titos and titas that helping me and Venice and other international students were able to survive. Pero yun nga din po, nandun sa akin yung faith ko na makakaya ko rin. Kasi kung wala din yung faith ko, syempre po, hindi ako nandito ngayon sa harapan nyo, nagsasabi kung ano yung experience ko. Kung at that point of time, nag-give up na ako. So, yun, isa din yon sa inaano ko sa utak ko na magiging okay ako, kaya ko, kahit mag-isa ako. Kasi nakaya ko nga pumunta dito na ako lang eh. So, yun din yung isa sa dream ko, why I risk to come in here without nothing, without people supporting me just by myself.
Yes.
So, just thinking positive din yun nakatulong sa akin. And then like people like Kuya Regan and Ate Jenny and other titos and titas that helping me. So, I was able to survive up until now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to actually highlight your plight, because I think me and Fidesz, we grew up, and me, even Christina, we grew up in a generation where going to university, the only international students that we came across were those that were very much coming from well-off families in their respective homelands, coming off, driving their European cars to exams and stuff, and thinking, okay, they could do whatever they want. They could continue on with their degree here, but they also have go back home and have a wonderful life waiting for them at home. So I think it's really important this conversation really unpacks that, because the diversity of international student experiences is quite is there, and it is we're very honoured to have both you and Venice talk about your circumstances. So thank you for vulnerability, sharing that vulnerability, Cello, and letting us know how you're going about it. And then Venice, how about you? What's life for you?
Well, when I came here in Melbourne, Australia, it was really hard at first. Well, we knew that before we come here, we should have enough money to survive at least a year. Yeah, I already knew that, but when we came here, we didn't have enough money. We didn't have a lot of money. We just had enough. We were expecting that we were gonna be able to get a job within a month. I was really expecting that. So I was really confident enough that when I get to Australia, it's okay. It's easy to get a job, no problem at all. But when I came here, it wasn't like that. Like the lockdown happened, and when the lockdown happened, I was really panicking because I already know that we didn't have enough money. Like, how can we survive? And we even chose a place in CBD, and our rent is really expensive, and we have our contract, so we couldn't leave. So I was like, it was stressing me out because I was like, um, how can we how can our money yeah we did,
And
as I
cover.
said, yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
have enough of money, and I was stressed about it. I remember that I even went to Elizabeth Street, and I went to stores, and I just gave my resume. I said, can I drop my resume? And my husband was also busy applying at Seek, and I've already applied for more than 1,000 jobs at Seek.com, and until now, I still got no positive response. And it was really stressful because my husband was starting to give up at that time. And he was trying to tell me that it was a bad idea coming here in Australia, like we shouldn't have come here. And I love it here. It was me who chose to come here. So I was like telling him, let's go to Australia, like support me with my studies, come with me. So it's like, if he is stressed, I'm stressed because I'm the one who told him to come here.
You feel a bit responsible, but yeah, I mean, that was one of the questions we wanted to know is why did you choose Australia above other countries?
Yeah. And I remember he was always telling me that he quitted his job for me, and he was really earning great. He used to work for the US Embassy, and he was really earning great. And
Wow.
now when we got here, he had nothing. Yeah, and then I remember I cried a lot during that time. During those times, I was really desperate, and I just kept calling my mom. I told my mom that I don't know what to do anymore. My husband is stressed. I don't know where we will get money. Like I don't know how I'm gonna pay my tuition for the second semester because my parents helped me for the first semester. But I was expecting that I will be able to pay for the second semester. But how can we do that if we don't have a job?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think that's a really good segue then to the conversations that you're having now, Kristine, with respect to University of Technology in Sydney. Like, what insights can you give in terms of what universities are doing at this time with the plight of students and what the second semester is going to look like in this remote learning circumstance?
Yeah, so I know that government hasn't provided much assistance to universities at all to deal with kind of fallout from the loss of international student enrollment or the restrictions that have been posed. But I know that universities, certainly UTS, has had some initiatives with extending some help to their international students in terms of relief for those who are here and who have lost jobs during lockdown. I know they are in the works of working through how to get their international students who are still stuck overseas here for the next semester. But I mean, that really depends on government regulations easing. But yeah, so it has been, universities have tried to do something in terms of giving some relief. But yeah, we could certainly do a lot more. And if the government helped out universities, that would be that would help the cause. And yeah, I mean, it's really kind of Cello and Venice, your perspective, sharing your experience really does put things into perspective of what's going on.
Yeah, and Regan, so obviously Cello and Venice are not the only ones experiencing, the challenges. Can you talk more about the program and how you came to be?
Yes, so definitely the idea of Damayang Migrante came out from this situation. As you can see, like Cello and Venice and other students have really felt not just an extreme pressure, but the need to be getting enough, I guess, food at that time, thinking about their savings, thinking about their expenses and their rents. So there's a lot of issues that international students face, not only in terms of paying their tuition fees or expenses, but the extreme pressure of being here in Australia and thinking of their health as well. So Migrante Melbourne has been existing for many years, and they came up with this idea of let's put up a welfare program. So two organizations that are based in the CBD area, which I represent one, which is the Philippine Studies Network in Australia, and Anakbayan, decided to join force and work with Migrante as well, because I think it's similar to that idea of a community network in Australia. We work with other community groups in let's say providing advocacy and welfare to people. So we came up with this idea of really helping them, as with many other organizations, not just us, I guess everyone, all of a sudden had this programs to help them, which is good. But the difference with Migrant is we have that advocacy. We have that idea of, okay, so this is happening on the ground. We need to help people, but what are their situations? We have to understand and inform them of their situation, and if we can empower them in some ways, because when the pandemic happened, many are confused, many are
Yeah.
stressed. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to get information. They don't know where to get help.
Yeah.
So we came up with that idea of, okay, these are the range of help that you can go to and access. And some of them have to negotiate with their not just with their landlords in
Landlords
terms of
too, yes.
leases,
Yeah.
because those are the big expenses that they have to pay. And
But obviously there's a lot of legal I guess terms and conditions and the fine print that they need to understand, which they may not necessarily know of already. So that support and that knowledge would be really valuable. Right?
Yep. I
Yeah.
think that's the idea of sharing, information. If you have extra food or extra things that you can provide to people,
Yeah.
that's the welfare part. But at the same time, well, it's good. Australia has this quick response from the government level, you know, changing the law for a while in terms of negotiating with landlords. But students wouldn't know that immediately, especially
No.
international students.
And so how many students are you actually right now engaging with and supporting? Do you have numbers around that?
In terms, we divided ourselves into different areas. So we have chapters in the west of Melbourne, and then there's an eastern chapter.
Yeah.
And then we're concentrating on the central business district, and that's the reason why we encountered Venice and Cello. So right now, more or less, we're dealing with 50 or more.
Okay. Yep.
But they say these individuals also share with other.
I think that's also our objective today, is to try and raise that awareness of your services, so that they can reach out to you and seek that support that you're providing, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also
And just to add, actually, so yeah, I think it's remarkable what you've done, Reagan, in Victoria in supporting the students. So in Sydney, I don't think there's been a formal kind of organized action, but I was told of this Facebook group called Adopt an International Filipino International Students. Which I think was really very kind of informal, like two Filipinos just kind of set up this group, and they had like a generosity board that every second day, and students can post the postcode where they live and if they need help, and then sponsors would come on to say, okay, I'm willing to help with you know, one-off groceries or kind of used secondhand clothes, blankets, especially with winter coming up. So yeah, like I think, and it was great. Like there was, I think, about 5K members on there. It was also for other states, but most of the activity was in Sydney. So it really just shows, I mean, with the work that you're doing, Reagan, there, and I mean, that particular example that I've just cited, yeah, that it's the community has really stepped up in helping temporary Filipino temporary migrants here, international students in particular. So I think, yeah, it's just fantastic, and it does show what our community is capable of, particularly when in times of crisis.
It's not to say that more can be done in that support, and that's, you know, I guess one of the key reasons why we wanted to have Salo, Venice, as well as yourself, Regan, to be part of this conversation, so that, you know, with our network of kababayans, what can we do sort of rally around you and help to amplify your voice, but also help to address, you know, the problems that you are currently encounter with shortages of food to be donated across your network, as well as any other additional funding that's required. So, you know, we'll definitely explore that as we sort of move along in the conversation as well. As recipients of Damayang Migrante services, Salo, what has been most helpful to you in terms of connecting with this group, and what would you like to see more of?
I can say that they helped me, aside from the food donation and then some clothes that I asked during winter times. They helped me also in my mental space, because I can openly talk to them in everything that I've been through. Ate Jenny and Kuya Regan has been there for me. I can easily talk to them if I have some problems to deal with, and even if not just problems, they just become my big sisters and brothers that I can just tell them what happened in my day-to-day life. Or so they help me in a lot of ways, and then they help me also find some short of extra jobs that I can cook up just to support myself. So yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Venice?
Well, they helped me a lot in terms of food, and I don't know how many times I got food from them, and I'm really thankful for that. So I always get a text message saying that they're gonna deliver food, and when they do, I always say that yes, I also want to have some food, and it's really helping me a lot, because before we used to pay like $300 per week just for food, and then for at least with the food donation, we were able to lessen our expenses. And also, it's really nice for me that whenever we see each other, they always ask me like, how am I? And I'm able to tell them, yeah, I'm doing good. This is happening to me, something like that. So it's not just giving food and then just going away. They're also in there giving food and asking you, how are you? Are you doing okay during this times? Which is really nice, because I feel that they care for us.
Well, that's important. I think community and the Bayanihan spirit is really important, because it does get you through some tough times, and often that connection, even just a conversation with one other person, can help you get through the day. So kudos to you, Regan, for your team for doing that, and we hope that we can do more around it.
If it does, you're very faint on the line.
Hear me? Okay, let me just fix that. Okay, Bruce, you want to move on to the next question, perhaps? Maybe you would throw back to Christine?
So Christina, like Christine, you're a lecturer at the University of Technology, Sydney. You're also the author of Racism and Resistance Among the Filipino Diaspora, the Everyday Anti-Racism in Australia, which was published in 2018, but it's a topic that's obviously resonated now with the world events and what's going on, the anti-racism, and what we can do to actively become an anti-racist. But can you additional light on what would you think is a larger political and social forces that are shaping the impacts to our Filipino international students and migrant workers at this time of Corona?
Yeah, sorry, is that something just happened with my earpiece? Yeah, so I mean, it's really highlighted just how, so the plight of these students and workers really has highlighted that this is rooted in this very problematic migration policy that now prioritizes temporary migration over permanent migration, which is that Australia now recruits primarily temporary skilled workers, but as well attracts international students to come here to basically bolster the economy, contribute their labor, contribute their skills, but not have to give them the same kind of rights and privileges that are given to citizens. So even though that they contribute just as so much to the economy and to our society, you know, these are not just kind of transient workers or transient students. Some migrant workers have been here for close to 10 years, or international students often do not just come here just to study, but you know, is a pathway to eventually gaining work here and permanent residency and eventually citizenship. And the government knows this. So, but it props for this temporary migration policy props up our economy, filling Australia's skills shortage. But yeah, just but doesn't give these people the same kind of rights and privileges. And you can see how that now plays out when a crisis hits. Basically, our Prime Minister said, well, just go home then. And as you know, Cheller explained, it's not just that simple. Like, a lot of these students and these workers have really sacrificed so much to come here. Their families back home perhaps invested quite a lot of money. Some take out loans just to get here. And so it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm just going to go home. You know, they were in, you know, they want to stay here and they need to stay here for, you know, to achieve, you know, the better life and get permanent work.
It's a little bit similar to, I guess, you know, the reasons why our parents, you know, moved and migrated to Australia to give us that better life. It feels like it's the next generation is experiencing a totally different, you know, scenario with this pandemic. And like you said, it's really brought to light the challenges and the difficulties within our own systems. And obviously within our Filipino international student community, it's a broader conversation as well, because you know, the hospitality industry as one industry that really sort of I guess employs a big part, a cohort of refugees and migrant students and international students. So a lot of these people are highly impacted. So just with regards to, I guess, moving forward, how do you think the next normal would look like, and what would you like to see change in the community or in the city that we're living in? I mean, obviously, for a lot of people, the next normal isn't clear because we are still going through this pandemic. It's not over yet. But are there anything that you like to share in terms of what you'd like to see improve or be better? Regan.
I guess.
How about you, Regan?
Yeah, I'll start. Obviously, there's a lot to be done. The Damayang Migrante program is obviously about welfare, providing that Damayang care, as we call it. But where the difference, I guess, with the program is we have that advocacy, like what Kristine has mentioned. Temporary migrants, including international students, came here to enrich not just the economy, but the social and cultural life here in Australia. And they're not just visitors or temporary transient individuals who maybe after their studies will go back to their homeland, or with this pandemic, they can, you know, easily go back. The idea here is that we have to give them the attention as well. In the case of, let's say, the pandemic, which exposed a lot of vulnerabilities in them, and hopefully in the future, in the long run, we can sort of rally for them and include them in that advocacy of probably changing the system in not just in migration, but in the way that the government would respond to everyone, you know, not just the residents or Australian citizens in Australia. I know it's a difficult task, but, you know, in some other countries, the idea of, let's say, if you are a foreigner or a temporary residents, and especially if you are a student who's contributing a lot to the Australian society with your taxes, with your skills, why don't you enjoy the same privileges of, let's say, a healthcare response, or the same job seeker, job keeper payment, you know?
Yeah, that's an important thing. I mean, these students, you guys are working paying tax, and tax is going towards, you know, the common benefit for the community, and I feel like it's not reciprocated back to you in that regard. So that's a kind of a hard, you know, hard thing to comprehend, really. You know, you do contribute so much, but not benefiting as others are. So yeah.
So those kinds of, I know it's not going to be ending soon. This pandemic is still ongoing. As you can see, one of the important things, not just for international students, but everyone, is employment. And that's going to be our challenge in the next couple of months, you know, going back to employment, having this COVID-safe economy. But at the same time, you know, what we can do, I guess, as a community or as part of the community, is to really work together, be engaged, understand the situation. As you can see, we're not like what Celo and Venice has mentioned. We're not just giving them food and telling them, okay, here's your probably weekly grocery, but we're trying to know them, and somehow through this platform like yours, we want the public to know the stories, the situations, the community, or the ground, how is it going, and in particular with this crisis.
Yeah, and I think to second what Reagan, you've said in terms of that, hopefully, you know, we can scale up this kind of grassroots assistance to kind of rally for more kind of structural change. So, you know, Filipino migrants are, I think, the third largest intake through the temporary migration, temporary visa scheme. So we are, you know, Filipinos are really adversely affected by, you know, anything that happens that concerns migrant workers, temporary migrant workers, or international students. And sometimes the rest of the Filipino community, so the permanent residents here and the citizens here, don't really know that. And we have, as a community in Australia, have a background in and a history of being politically active. So I can think of probably the most prominent activism that our community had undertaken in the past was around the issue of Filipino women who came here as on partner visas, and then who experienced, you know, kind of high rates of domestic violence, and some, you know, ending in tragically in death. And that was really very prominent, I think, in the 80s and 90s in the Australian media, all these reports. And the first kind of activism that emerged was to address this situation. So we lobbied for changes to at the government level to regulate, say, the international marriage market in terms of the dating agencies and so on. Filipino women were very active in working with the media to try to change the perception of Filipino women, who were being portrayed in films and popular culture as, either kind of, predatory gold diggers or these docile slaves and so on, which filters into, these situations of domestic violence, right? And we were quite pivotal to changing that kind of landscape around marriage migration here to Australia. So I think we could draw from that past, because the issues now have changed in terms of the Filipino migrant experience in Australia, because we're no longer migrating as permanent settlers, because the system isn't built that way anymore, but as temporary migrant workers. So these now, the precarity, the uncertainty, the insecurity that temporary migrants experience here is the kind of issue now that faces the community. So I think, to kind of raise awareness that this is the kind of new issue that we have to grapple with, and that we can rally behind, and that we have had history. And across the global Filipino diaspora, because we migrate primarily as migrant labor, we have a very vocal presence in many of the countries that Filipinos work and live, just because we've had to fight for our rights and so on. So I think definitely, I hope, come to the question of what do we want in a kind of post-COVID world, is that as a community, we see solidarity across the differing situations that we find ourselves in. So, a middle-class Filipino migrant, you have to see that they are connected to the plight of an international student.
During our prep call, Kristine, the one thing that actually resonated with me was, back in the 80s, 90s, there was predatory dating services that would actually enter into the Philippines to recruit these women to become partners of Australian men and whatever. But, a similarity can be now seen in the vocational colleges that are happening here in Australia, where, they're luring these Filipino students to come over here. But in terms of the protections that they get when they do come here, it's oftentimes quite precarious as well, in the sense what they is not what they've actually entered into. Can you give some more to that? Because that's actually something that not many of us, I think, are aware of as a loophole within our higher educational system that's resulting in these very, very vulnerable situations that students are finding themselves in.
Yeah, as you said earlier, Grace, it's debunking that myth of what an international student is. It's not this wealthy European student. A lot of the international students now are coming from kind of less advanced economies, like the Philippines or Nepal, and so and they're not studying in fancy universities. A lot of them are studying in these vocational colleges, and there is some research out there that shows the kind of quality of the education at these vocational colleges is questionable. The amount of fees that they charge is just out of this world, and that international students have to shoulder, and it's part of this very profitable global migration industry that emerged particularly as a result of most countries shifting to a temporary migration policy. So it was kind of, these two things colliding that now puts the most vulnerable in these positions that in a time of crisis, they really don't have much help and assistance. So yeah, it is, these kind of everyday plights that are located in this larger problematic system around migration now that needs to be addressed with our government.
Sorry, if I may add to that, I think, precisely what Kristine has mentioned is correct. we encountered students who had problems with their colleges, and we can't name these colleges obviously, but you know, during the start of the pandemic, these colleges are, because they're not sort of regulated by the government because they're businesses.
Yeah.
So that's changing as well. They were really forcing the students to pay their tuition when the government has somehow clamped down uh, or freeze gave some sort of like a way to help the students negotiate with some of the schools, but because these obviously they're relying to the tuition fee of these students, they were really forcing many, and that's an issue as well, like what Kristine mentioned. We don't usually hear these kinds of stories. These are smaller colleges who offer vocational courses because precisely these courses are pathway to permanent residency or work. Yeah, so we had those issues, and obviously the students are dealing with the pandemic, and at the same time this pressure to pay for their fees, or else some of the colleges are saying, okay, we will cancel your visa, which is not correct. I mean, which is not right. So that kind of, you know, new way, like what you mentioned, Grace, of luring them to come here. But when this crisis happened, who takes care of them in those situations? Who helps them, and who sort of advises them in dealing with such situation? It's also very important that we as a community come together, and like what Kristine has mentioned, hopefully we can do some systemic change in the long run, but at the same time, you know, come together and sort of know them and care for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously the situation is really challenging right now, and we all want to sort of pitch in and help. Have there been some really positive outcomes in some of your efforts, and can you share some of that with us?
Definitely, I think Australians are one of the generous, you know, people or country in the world in terms of helping. Yeah, we get a lot of donations, and it's good because the government has found a way to help the residents to cope with their financial needs.
Yeah.
The good thing about the Damayang Migrante program is that we get this help. And with the campaign that we have initiated at the beginning of the program, we knew that the students will really need not just food allowances, but some sort of assistance from the government. And I think that's the Victorian government eventually had this support, economic support for the international students, and not just the Filipinos, but every, I mean, many groups also rallied behind the international students, and this is the importance of the community rallying behind these people. So, you know, we had those assistance right now, but at the beginning of the pandemic, if we didn't take, you know, such action, I guess, you know, the government can delay or can think twice before giving those assistance. So that's a positive thing, I believe. And of course, hopefully in the long run, we can work with you and other community groups in not just providing welfare, but somehow in bringing some of the campaigns into a bigger forum, into a bigger public discussion about what's happening in the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe Grace, you want to talk about one of the initiatives we're looking at delivering in the next few weeks?
Yeah, so in the next week and so, we'll be sharing more insights as to what we're planning to do as entrepreneurs, and partnering up with the Damayang project, as well as a fellow Filipino-Aussie business owner by the name of Melo Malazarte. So she's a co-owner of a cafe in West Footscray called Migrant Coffee. And we were thinking of using that space and working with her to actually have a Kape and Bakes fundraiser, where we would use her premises to actually invite people to not only, you know, fundraise through by virtue of purchasing the bake sales from our community of bakers and makers, but also use it as a platform to raise awareness about the plights of the international students that make up the Damayang Migrante, and really share their stories on a more one-on-one basis. So as people, you know, come along and with social distancing still in play, just to be able to share that story beyond this platform that we've created today. And I think hopefully when more details are furnished, we'll be able to share that with this community. And we hope to see many folks come and support the team when we hold this Kape and Bake sale, fundraising sale.
Yeah. So that's just one of the ideas that we have, and we want to we'll definitely want to continue the conversation and learn more about how we can make an impact and we can rally our community to support you. So just mindful of time, just before we wrap up the conversation, there's so many elements we can sort of talk about, but as I said, this conversation is one of many. So one thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up is, you know, what would you like to leave as a final thought to our listeners? Maybe we start with Cello and Venice. What would you want to share with our community as a final thought following this convo? Cello, you've got your mute on.
Sorry. When maybe when everything will be okay in the future, hopefully some of those areas and some people will be so open-minded towards us international students, because they really thought that becoming international students, we have all the financial access. They don't know that we came here that on our own. And then some of them, in my previous experience, I hope that they're also just give little consideration to us, that we're also human being, not to bully us. And then because racism and discrimination, we experienced that a lot. I experienced that a lot also, even in the train or in the bus or just in the street. Some of them were really Australians, enjoying our tax money, and then some of that people. And then I'll just hope that in the future we'll just have a hand-to-hand helping each other, not discriminating, and then have an idea, an open mindset that we're people also, we have feelings, and then we're trying to survive in this pandemic. So that's it. Thank you for having me and for hearing my voice and everything. Thank you.
We thank you too, Cello.
And
And how about you, Denise?
I think Cello already said everything, so I'm just thinking the same. So I just hope that we won't be facing any kind of discrimination and those kind of things, just the same. Yeah.
thank you. Kristine, any last minutes or last words?
I mean, I think, you know, just for listeners to, you know, just support the community organizations or the initiatives like the one that Reagan is running, you know, support with donations, you know, spread the word. And yeah, I guess just, come election time, it's, you know, it matters. Vote for policies that espouse, you know, equality, that are, you know, sensitive to the experiences of people from different walks of life. Because really, it's at that level that you can get that kind of more wide impacting change. But yeah, at that everyday level, please, support these community organizations. And yes, just be kinder to international students who are doing it tough.
Thank you. Yeah, inclusive policy, right? Yes.
Yeah. So we're continuing the drive. It's not yet the end, like I mentioned. We can provide more information through our social media site. I think there's a lot out there, but we have this Damayang Migrante page, and then we can sort of continue feeding you information as to what's happening, the progress of these program, what to do next. Of course, there's that welfare part, but at the same time, like Kristine has mentioned, we're trying to advocate as well and examine and interrogate the situation and inform the public. I think that's the another important thing. Like through this platform, working with you, working with other community groups, working in a diverse setting, you know, where we might also work with other international students. That's another important thing. You know, we don't work just as a Filipino community, but as a sector, I believe, and we are in a very cosmopolitan and diverse setting. So we share those kind of struggles. It might be different from one country to another, but the system, like what Kristine has mentioned earlier, made these situations as well for international students and temporary migrants coming here and becoming more vulnerable in a time of a pandemic. So there's a lot to do, but at the same time, looking beyond the grim part of this situation. If we work together, I mean, this might sound cliche or trite, you know, we can do a lot as well. We can do some changes. We can effect changes as maybe in the everyday or in a much bigger scale. So yeah, I would like to thank you for letting us be here at this moment and sharing this information, and we hope to work with you more in the future. And with what you heard from the international students, it's really not just about this pandemic, but the everyday racism or the race even the issues that they have confronted as migrants can be talked about in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing conversation. And if anything can be drawn from our own experiences being ates or huyas amongst our community, you know, I think when people come here without their family as their support system, it makes that transition so much harder. So when we as fellow Filipinos, you know, come across these migrant workers, these migrant temporary, you know, international students, you know, extend out that hand, extend out that ear, and just be there for them to actually talk to and listen to, and find ways that you can do your small little actions can make an impact, big impact into their everyday life. So on that note, I do want to thank everyone that came along for this conversation. As we mentioned, it's the first of many, and it's the first of many collaborations that we hope to have together with Anak Bayan Melbourne, as well as with Damayang Migrante. And do keep an eye out on our socials as well, as we sort of come together and have more insights as to how that fundraiser will work. But in the meantime, we'll be sharing some of the materials that Regan has generously shared with us with respect to the ongoing sort of fundraising opportunities that exist for Damayang Migrante. We'll do that through our socials. But thank you again on this Saturday for joining us early. Wherever you may be in the world, whether it be here in Sydney or elsewhere, you know, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay very hopeful. We thank you from the Entrepreneurs and appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.